Okay, welcome back to a new episode of the Divine Ethereal Beings with Dayna and Dayna. I'm laughing because we were just talking about, what our topic might be for today, and we were kind of bouncing around and not really landing solidly on something. And then all of a sudden just popped in my head. I said, let's go galactic. Let's go something that's a little bit more out there today. Let's talk about something that gets us off of Earth for a little while. Maybe just gives you a very different perspective to listen to. I won't lie, this might be a little bit more out there for some people. It is okay if you don't resonate with this kind of stuff. You don't have to listen to this one at all. But it is just something both of us really enjoy doing. We're both quite connected to universal things and galactic things as well. So, we're just going to talk about, some different things today just to get off the earthly things and just give a break in a way that makes it more fun, makes it more of a dynamic that gets people thinking, I guess, in a way that maybe we don't all get to think about in a daily basis being human. So let's talk galactic today.
Yeah. You can go ahead. I mean, I have some things that are circling around, but nothing's really
Okay. Awesome. Well, I'm going to start with more basic, right? So we all got to know that we're not the only ones out here in the universe. Our Earth is actually quite young compared to the universe and some of the other stars and planets that exist just alone in our own solar system. So when we think about, aliens, if you want to call it that, or other galactic beings, there's all sorts of terms, pick one that resonates with you as all what I say. But, there's a basis to it to understand that we are the most dense as well. So we're in 3D, and we always think that everything else should be in 3D outside of ourselves as well. And to an extent it is, but we also have to know, as we know, and what we've talked about lots already, is energy exists as well. So not every living thing is going to be seen necessarily in a physical way, and it can be just of energy. And so that's something that I've learned even for myself when it comes to galactic topics or galactic things, is not to use words all the time necessarily, and more or less feel into it to understand more of what necessarily that energy means outside of Earth itself. So it's a very fun topic for me. I love galactic.
Yeah, and they're wanting me to just bring up the term extraterrestrial
Yes.
and kind of look at that in general. And basically, it's of or from outside the Earth or its atmosphere, right? So it's just terrestrial would be of the Earth, right? Here in the 3D reality, and extra is just things that are outside of that, right?
Yeah, and I love that broken down to be so simple, because that's exactly what it means, right? And so many people have the connotation of extraterrestrial as like being this bad thing, and it makes sense, right? Because it's the unknown, it's scary. We don't know a lot about, what else is kind of out there. But the funniest part to me though is that we actually know about more about our universe, our solar system, and space than we know more about our own oceans. And so it just goes to show, the interest is there, I guess, to start exploring more of that. But when it comes to the galactic stuff, I always giggle because I know they're kind of looking in the wrong place. Everybody's looking for the physical things, and it was once said to me too. They said if you just looked in the energetics, you would find more of us because that's more where a lot of us lie. And only in the connotation of understanding too that being human here, we're in a very different experience. We're in a very much lower dimension and living in a 3D, whereas a lot of these other beings have a lot more experience. They've been around for many more years, thousands upon thousands of years, right? So they've ascended higher, they've gone into different dimensions. So people forget, that this is not the only dimension that exists. There's many. And just as a quick example is our imagination is the fourth dimension. It's considered fourth dimension, right? So you visualize it, you see it in your own mind's eye, but it doesn't mean it's actually happening yet in your physical reality. So in which that's just kind of giving an example of another dimension. So there's much to it, and it can get very complicated, but we're going to try not to get too far into some rabbit holes on that kind of stuff yet. And we'll just talk more about, more basic stuff, maybe about some different types of beings that maybe you and I have both had connections with. Talk maybe a little bit about what starseed means. A lot of people are very, very curious to know what starseed necessarily means. And we can maybe talk a little bit more too about how our souls do live many different lives, and that's not always human. So that's what I've gotten as downloads.
Yeah. There's like an opportunity to have some distinctions around dimensions and densities as well, right? So another way to think about that, right? Like when we talk about fourth dimension, it's almost like we can think about it like a density. So third density, fourth density, fifth density, right? And almost this like vertical scale for our human mind. And then we can think about dimensions almost as like a vertical scale, right? So it can get quite complex, but I just want to offer that as a way of thinking about it too. And it can be a little weird because you're like, oh, fourth density, fifth density, there's this human connection with going higher, like it, like people get confused on like, oh, it's heavier almost. And that's not what it is. You can think about it more like how fast the molecules are vibrating in those densities and frequencies, right? So, like at the higher dimensions, we're vibrating higher, there's more molecules bouncing off of each other, right? Versus in third density, right? We're heavier, we're slower, the frequency is slower, right? So, does that make sense?
Totally. And I really like that description of like showing that. And then just remembering it's not quite a ladder, as you know, like you said, it is more of like, if you want to go into more scientific, going back to chemistry, like you said, where the molecules, when you're more dense, only vibrate because they only have so much space to move. And then as they get more space in between, that means, they have more space to move around. And hence why, when I said they giggle sometimes at us because we look for that dense, really close together molecules when really they're not, and they're going to be more airy. There's not going to be as much solidity to them when you're of a higher dimension necessarily. So it's fun. And I really like that analogy because it just seems so great and simple of how to explain that. So thank you, because I really enjoyed that part of it. Let's talk real quick about Starseed before we kind of jump into some of the other galactic beings that you and I have had connections with, just because I think Starseed will help, people understand that, there's more to us than just what's here.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. I'll go ahead, sure. So Starseed is something I often actually get asked quite a bit about because everybody's curious to know, like, have you ever lived other lives somewhere else other than Earth? All this stuff. I'm going to tell everybody straight up, absolutely, of course you have, because like I said, Earth is quite young compared to where we are in the universe. And so in which many of our souls, we are eternal, right? When we were created at some point, we have fractioned off, and we have become, down to a piece, that we now integrate into lives. And of course, we've all come from somewhere else because, like I said, Earth is young. So most of us have come from somewhere else in the universe, different galactic places, different beings, different ascension processes, and all that kind of stuff. And of course, yes, there has been also humans that have lived human life after human life and have chosen to be a part of Earth for most of their learning or their adventure, I guess is the best way I could put it. So starseeds, I find when people know that there's likelihood that they have not always been on Earth, you're usually quite fascinated with the universe, stars, planets, usually something outside of Earth. There just seems to be like this link, and you just kind of seem to be fascinated by it. Me as a child, I was super fascinated by all the solar system stuff, all the stars. I wanted to learn everything I could about, the universe. I just thought it was such an amazing place. And that is one of the big things I would say for most starseeds that have lived, I would say, a life that you were maybe out on another planet or somewhere else before you came back to Earth. And it's probably not that long ago before you've chosen to come back in Earth life again. So that's where starseed, that term, comes from, because we know that this is not necessarily our home planet, that we may have lived or spent more time with a different planet, star, or galactic race. So that's starseed for you in that way, that you can kind of start to understand why you've maybe felt a little out of place here, or you've always kind of been more fascinated by extraterrestrials or out there, if you want to call it that, and those types of things. And so starseed really just likely means you've likely lived lives with other beings, and that's why you have that connection, with the universe in that way. And it doesn't mean that not everybody is a starseed, like I said, but when someone's lived here as human lives and they've dedicated to wanting to better Earth or be here as a connection piece, then there's a high chance you don't have as much obsession with the stars, and that's okay. If you're more obsessed with Earth itself, that's wonderful, but it doesn't mean you originated here, likely because you would have come from somewhere else to bring forth what you know to help Earth in the way you're meant to help Earth itself. So that's kind of the differentiation. I would probably be able to best explain it as starseed, but if you have anything to add, please do.
I think it's, I think you already touched on this, but it's this really common experience where like you just don't feel like you're home here. You just like this is not it, right? Like you just have this knowing that it's that and you when you first start out, you typically like you don't have a lot of context. It's just like I don't feel at home here, right? Like you don't feel at home in your body. You don't feel at home in your family. You don't feel at home on the planet. And there tends to be a lot of people have this real longing and yearning to go home, whatever that is, but they can't tell you what that is, right? And yeah, so you just want to acknowledge like it can be quite an experience, and it's okay to feel lost, and it's okay to not feel at home, and it's like just keep on your human journey of looking for your people to connect with, because basically what's going to happen is it's going to be a remembering process of who you are, what is home, where you're from, right? All of these things. And what are your gifts or abilities or your purpose? Why are you here on earth, right? Like, because as a star seed, like you had some specific reasons why you chose to come here now in the particular body that you're in. Like there are so many factors. I don't want to go too far into it, but like even the DNA in your biophysical human form that you're currently in has connections and threads to the star family that your origins, right? Like, so there's just so much to this. And I remember when I very first started channeling and I was learning to channel it, and this was many years ago. And it was just deep in that space and listening and meditation. And an instructor was guiding. And so she was posing the questions for us, right? And the very first thing, like I really actively heard where I was intentionally trying to channel, and we're not talking about like psychic abilities, like this was going into channeling space. What I heard was like, you're a star family ambassador. And I was like, great, what the heck is that? Right. And nobody knew, the instructor didn't know. She's like, I've never heard that term. And I was just given this image, like Star Wars, right? At least like the classic, like this stuff comes from somewhere. It's all in plain sight. And like we're just programmed to not see it, you know?
Exactly. And it's funny that, you know, that's also where you'll start to understand more about yourself if you feel like you are a starseed as well in meditation, because meditation puts you in that place where you can connect more fully, not just to yourself, but to everything. And so in which your starseed family will always want to reconnect with you. So you know that they try to give you answers and ways to comfort you and understand and give you some understanding of, again, coming back to why you chose to be here on Earth. And, even for myself, I was quite uncomfortable for a long time before I finally started to, find some of my answers that I was kind of trying to figure out and put my pieces together. Because again, it's like that knowing, but nobody can seem to give you those answers. So by finding, places and people and coming inwards, you got to go inwards. If you feel like you're a starseed, that's the best thing you can do for yourself, is come in place, go into meditation and start calling upon your starseed family. And when you do, that's inviting them in, and eventually you will connect more fully with them. You'll connect on more of a conscious basis with them. And for myself, so here my starseed family and some of the others are already coming in, because we're talking about this now and they're very excited to be connecting in this way. But even for myself, so I look very Palladian, and so Palladian is very quite well known extraterrestrial being or a race that exists outside of Earth. And if anybody knows much about extraterrestrials, or you've kind of dabbled a little bit in this, Pleiadian is probably a very common word you've heard. They do have a lot to do with Earth. Many of them have come to help us here, you know, and go through our evolution of consciousness and up level, really, in a sense. And they are some of the most loving beings. They really are. And I look very much like Pleiadians. I am blonde. I am very fair skinned. I know that they are part of my starseed family, and along with the Octurians, but I do look very Pleiadian. Actually, I was quite taken back one day. I was walking down the road, and this was before I was kind of in my own abilities and understood any of this. And this woman said to me, you just look so familiar. This is how she phrased it. She said, you look really familiar. And I said, oh, I don't think I've ever met you before, you know, but you know how we all kind of look like other people sometimes. And there was just something about her that I was just kind of curious about. And she says, you must be Pleiadian. And I was like, sorry, what? Because I never heard that before. And that's what she said to me. And then she just kind of smiled and she walked away. And I was like, okay, that was a really weird interaction in a way, right? But it kind of opened the door for me to start understanding more about what the heck that was. And it was funny because after I realized that was my team trying to get me to look more into certain things, right? And then of course, after I became more connected, I obviously dove right into it. But it's just sometimes those little things will happen. And so just don't write them off. Like if something happens like that to you, just like look into it, because it's probably happening for a very good reason. Whether you kind of know what it is or not, just, you know, open up. And well, obviously I didn't find a whole lot on Google, because I find sometimes it's like, you know, Pleiadian is a word that can be used in all sorts of different terms. And where I find a lot of my answers was actually on Gaia. So if nobody's ever heard about the Gaia app, you need to go and check that out. Just be prepared to lose yourself for like an entire day watching all sorts of different things on there. It is very informative. But it was that place where I started to understand more about what some of these galactic races were. And obviously there's much more to this. We know that there's been all sorts of history with other racial beings outside of Earth coming to Earth to help us and all this stuff. And there's plenty of that on Gaia. If you're really curious, go check that out there. It's not a whole I'm going to open up today on here, because there's so much information there. But so Pleiadian is, to give a quick description of what, you know, more Pleiadians are like, they look a lot like us, right? They look very human, but they're quite a bit larger, I would say, than us. They usually stand 6 or 7 feet tall. I'm considered short, you know, to be human and partially look like a Pleiadian, but that's where a lot of my deep roots have come from. Very, very loving beings. They really just want to help. They want to see people heal here. They want to see people lose the pain and suffering. They want to give perspective. They want to help open the doors that, you know, a lot of us didn't know existed, that we didn't know that there's this inner power within ourselves. And so hence why part of the reason why I've come here back to Earth is to help build the bridge between, you know, what didn't exist before and being able to show what does exist, and allowing people to start healing themselves to be true creators in their life. And that's really, I find, what the Pleiadians are probably more about. They're all about the love, man. If they could send you love bubbles all the time, that's probably what they would do.
Yeah, they keep bringing me back to the piece to talk about maybe a little bit of as far as meditating and where to go with that. It's like, without going too much into it, it has to do with our non-coded DNA and what our non-coded DNA is designed for and meant for, why it's there and all of this stuff. But essentially on a really like basic level, when you go in to do this meditation, just take yourself further and further and further into your both physical heart and emotional heart chakra. Just keep going deeper and deeper and deeper into the heart and traveling through the chambers of the heart and following that light. Like use that as the doorway. And you can do this for any meditation, but specifically for this, going in through the heart. And if you so choose, because you're of this mind, connecting to the space of the DNA strands, and specifically the non-coded DNA within your heart, because it acts on multiple levels. It does open this doorway or this wormhole, this portal into the other realms with your intention of connecting to your star family that invites them specifically to come through. And then it also acts as like a self heart activation to connect with the star family. So yeah, yeah.
No, I love that because it's true. And that, so basically what they're also showing me is it's a very specific frequency that you both have to meet on. And so it might not happen the first time, it might not happen the second time, but it's about that practicing to get yourself into that space. And the reason for this is, as much as they would like to just come blasting through the door, you know, they can't do that. We're on a very low frequency as being human and very, very dense. And so in which, for these beings that are of higher dimensions, it can take quite a bit for them to be able to lower that far before, you know, to try to meet you on the level, you know, where you're at. And it's not that they still don't somewhat do that even through that type of meditation, but at least that way you're meeting more in the middle, and it's more clear and concise that way than rather like, it's almost like back in the day when the CD used to skip and you'd be like, God damn it, and you can't hear your favorite part of the song almost. That's almost like exactly what happens if it's not more neutral meeting grounds, because it, you know, the frequency gets broken up a little bit, and then it can become confusing for us because it's like, well, did I get that? I don't know, because now I'm like wondering if that was my own mind because it was so fragmented, right? So it's, I would say, you know, just practice it out if it's something you really want to do and open up to. You know, and the other thing is they just want to make sure to remind too that any meditation you do, no matter what, but especially when you're reaching out a little farther than you're used to, just making sure that you're asking for some extra protection around yourself, just so you feel safe while you're doing so as well, and that you're not feeling like you're going to get like seen by all these things. I promise you that's not that's not what happens, but it can make you feel a little like uncomfortable because you don't really know exactly, you know, what you're kind of opening the door to. So just asking for that little extra protection is all.
Yeah, and exactly. And that's kind of the just like with going in through the heart, like that going inward as, and just to mention, like there are so, and it, there's nothing wrong with doing this where people take you up through your chakras and out into the universe. It's not that we're saying that that's wrong or bad or there's anything wrong with that. It's just that some people might not be comfortable with that. And so this is just another alternative where you're going within through your heart. And so it can provide a little bit, it can feel a little safer and more like you're staying in your body to
Yeah.
access.
Yeah, for sure. I think the first time I like shot right out, like it was through a meditation like that they were bringing, and that, and it was fine. It was great. I was excited about it, but it kind of almost freaked me out a little bit because it was so fast. And of course then that's where my motion sickness would sometimes come from, as well as leaving the body too quickly. My actual physical body would feel like I'm going to throw up. So that wasn't exactly fun for me either, but I didn't really care for it at first. So I love the fact that you brought up going through the heart center, because that was one of my favorite ways to first really starting to get to know and initiating that type of intention. It just, again, it does make you feel like you're still here. You know, it's just that your mind is more or less kind of drifting than making it feel like your whole body's kind of going, right? So I love that. I think it's fantastic. Just a quick other rundown on some of the other really big beings that a lot of people here know about on Earth are Syrians. And of course, Syrians, I love Syrians, and I know that's who you're connected to. They're very they're really interesting beings to me. I do love connecting sometimes with them because I learned so much from them and the connection you guys have, like through the home planets, and not just through the home planets, but like how absolutely everything is connected through energy, and like being able to see, almost literally see how it runs, you know, through these flows is just amazing to me. And the Syrians are just absolutely amazing for that type of thing. Oh, it's so funny because now that, see, now as soon as I start talking about them, they're just like popping little things in. Um, the Syrians, though, it's interesting. A lot of people don't know this, but the Syrians actually brought the marijuana plant to Earth. And it's why it's such an interesting aspect, because there's so much good about a marijuana plant, you know, and there's so much you can do with it. And so, and I know it's had scientists stumped quite a bit on how, you know, certain pieces of it work and how and why. And that's part of it, because it never actually originated here on Earth. It actually came from somewhere else. So it was a healing modality that they actually wanted to give to Earth.
Yeah, it's interesting because they were dropping some personal information in around that for me. So I'll just go ahead and share in case it resonates for anybody else who knows that they're Syrian. So me and that plant spirit just don't get along in this human form, in this life on this planet. And what they were saying is just, yes, it originated and was brought in. However, like everything else on this planet, right, it gets modified, it's structural and makeup changes. And then it's like, yeah, and I find too, and many people will also find this, like we actually don't have to ingest the medicines. Like it's still a frequency, it's still a spirit, and you can connect with it and its medicine without having that physical injection piece. And so yeah, that's really interesting that they bring that up. And then I was like, huh, I don't get along with that, but I'm Syrian. And they're like, this is why it's
Nope.
okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the fun part about this too, is like as we're connecting and doing this, I think again it's a fun piece. There's a lot going on in Earth right now, and I think it's fun to just kind of step away from that and talk about something a little bit different. Now I've got the Octurians kind of hanging out in the background. The Octurians are known as some of the most highly ascended beings of our universe. Their energy is a little different. They actually are so technologically advanced, and in a way they're somewhat analytical, but they do have a very loving frequency as well. Like they do want to see the best for everybody. But on Earth, like this is where they just want to give the scientists this stuff and like these ideas and these knowledge to be able to take it to the next level. And the Octarians are very they process extremely fast as well, I find. So when I do connect with them, it doesn't feel like it's a very long connection, because it's just like bam, 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 there it all is. It doesn't have to be like this long drawn out thing by any means. And the most amazing thing I also find about them is before I have even formulated the question in my mind, they're already answering it, because their connection and their vibration is so high that they just catch it, right? They just catch whatever it is you wanted to know in that moment. And it's like they just grab it out of the air and they're like, oh, here you go. Here's all your answers before you've even formulated the question. And so I do find the Octarians to be quite a bit of fun to sometimes connect with. And they're very quick to give you what you need. And they're very loving in that way too. They do it in a great way, but they're also like, okay, here you go. Have a nice day. We're moving on. And have a great time. So I would say that, they've always been involved with their stuff to an extent, but I would say there's also a line and a boundary that they keep more hard placed than maybe like the Pleiadians do or the Syrians do. They're a little bit more involved here.
It feels more stoic,
Yeah.
right? Like this guidepost, right? Whereas like Syrians feel like there's a serious element of water and flow, right? It's just a different energy. And then the Andromedans are popping in for me, and they're like, we want to play, we want you to be
Exactly like us.
right? Like feel your physical body. It's a blessing, it's a miracle. Like, yeah. So
And the Andromedans are fun. I would say they're probably the most playful out of those beings. They like to have a good laugh. They like to make sure nothing's kept too serious, but also in a very loving way for people to understand the power that lies within themselves, because it is one of those things that the Andromedans, I've done some work with them, not so much with myself. I have had some interactions, yes, but with other people particularly, that is more of the beings that are here working with them. It's not always Starseed, but the beings that have signed up as soul contracts to, do some work with them. And it's very interesting to me. And the Andromedans are huge. Like their energy. When I first remember connecting with them, I had no words, because they were such big energy. All I could do was basically giggle, because I didn't know what else to do, because that's just what it made me feel like. But they are amazing beings. They are known as the architects of the universe for a reason. The way that they can build, connect, and bring together energies and harness it is mind-blowing. And that is just something that, again, they want to help people here on Earth and come up to a next level in a way. But again, there was very hard lines drawn with the Andromedans. And from what I've learned, it sounded more like to me that the archangels had more to do with bringing the Andromedans in than the Andromedans wanting to just come into Earth and help with some dynamics here. They've only really made themselves, I would say, more known lately in the past probably 4 or 5 years to people and to Earth itself, because of our times and where we're moving, I would say more so. And being the architects, they can't really help. They want to dabble a little bit, things are changing, so they want to help us build out a much better reality in a way. So the Andromedans are a lot of fun though. I know that they can be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and it's so interesting. They keep popping this image in for me. It's really funny. So like it's like a whole scene where you're like walking in and out of like a grocery store, or like, with the automatic doors that open, right? And you can imagine this like 7 foot young cowboy looking avatar with this like hat and the boots, right? And just this charisma and this like, and he winks at you as he's going out. Maybe he wants to like hold your door or help you with something, right? And it's just this like, it's this heart feeling where you can't even um like it has an impact, like that simple wink, that activation, that frequency, like it impacts you, right? And then it's like with all of these beings, it's important to understand that they are here and they're walking with us. And I remember I went through a few year period of time where like I could just straight up see them in their like human, like projection avatar form, right? And or where they would come in and they would want to speak to me. So they might like literally kind of speak through someone else, right? Like come in with the consciousness to deliver a message. And maybe these people wouldn't be super aware of it, but like it was really clear to me. So I guess all of that to say is like, you're not crazy.
Yeah,
They're,
exactly.
like if you're feeling an inkling or you're leaning towards or like curiosity, like what the hell is this? Like I feel like this is not a normal human. Like don't be scared, and it's probably not.
Yeah, like, and honestly, and it's super funny because ever since I've done my own inward work and stuff, I actually had met a woman at one of the fairs I had done, and I remember her sitting across from me, and we did this reading and all this stuff. And I remember her being a wonderful person, and again, but I don't remember much what I've said in readings. And I remember her saying to me after, she's like, "Are you sure you're human?" And I said, "Yeah, I think so, but I do, I just understand a lot." And she said, "There's just something about you that just seems different." And I said, "Well, I'm different, yes, because I'm also choosing to do, different things and for myself and doing the work and whatever else you want to describe it as." But I started to kind of giggle, but then afterwards it was like I can see why some people might also feel like when they see other humans, I know I'm human. I didn't actually come from another planet. I was born here, like this is my physical body here. But I could see why it almost seems like for someone that's on such a different level or frequency as human, why it can almost look like as if we maybe don't exist as human, right? Because it's like, yes, I understand most of the population is not on that level yet, but that is where we're headed, and I can't help but feel like there are lots of us that are coming out of the woodwork now to be a very different example of what we can do here as being human. So I love the fact that you kind of brought that up too, because it does feel like, depending on people's perceptions and of course all their experience and where they've been at is how they'll perceive. But I thought it was quite funny when she said that to me, but it also started to make sense why, yeah, okay, I guess it might not look like I'm totally human because I don't function quite in the same way necessarily, maybe, right? It looks very different to someone else that maybe has not experienced that yet. So,
Well, and then this conversation ties in a little bit to like all the AI and all the technology, right? And cloning and all of this stuff. Like, we're not going to go into any of this, but all of it like intermingles. Like, just because you're perceiving that somebody doesn't quite feel human, like there could be many options of what is going on. I think the biggest thing though really is like being open to the fact that the truth is hidden in plain sight.
mhm.
um and really questioning everything. I think we've mentioned this before. So like even when you're like, we are constantly questioning the messages we're receiving, what's coming through, like, what is this, you know, um, like, don't stop. Like, don't just take our word for what we're saying or whatever else. It's like, just get curious. Like,
Exactly. I agree with you on that, on everything, you know, not just about the galactic stuff. I know it's harder to like feel like you're getting a solid answer on the galactic things because it is kind of really out there. It's not like a very well-known, talked about thing. It is when you start looking under the blanket, it is, right? There's many of us that are talking about this kind of stuff, but again, it comes back to just coming back to your own discernment. Like, does it resonate for you? Because if it doesn't, that's okay. Just let it go out the other year, you know, just leave it behind. If it resonates, wonderful, awesome. Get curious about it. Go look at more stuff if you wish to, you know, to get more of your own truth set in place. And like this was something that kind of bothered me when I was a kid, that everybody says, oh, there's only ever one truth. There's only one truth. And this is, you know, the rest of it is like, you know, excuses or something else. And I'm like, but that doesn't feel true to me, right? And well, for good reason, because we all have our own inner truth. What, you know, what works for us or what resonates with one of us may not resonate with the next person. And that's totally okay. You know, we're all a perfect piece of the puzzle for a reason, because we're not all meant to see it the same way. We're not all meant to agree on every little piece of it. So,
well, and they're bringing me back to, we had that little preparation session a week or two ago of where like we're not we're not ready for the whole truth. And even on an individual journey and basis, it's like, no matter how much you push and force and this and that, like, if it's not like, and it might not be anything about you, it might be more of like, it's not time for this truth to be known in a collective sense or on a wider scale, right? Like, the reality is, like, no matter how much you try and force into, I want to know this truth, like, you're not going to know until it's time for you to know. As a collective, we're not going to know until it's time for us to know. It's the unfolding, right? Just like in the journey, you know, peeling back the layers of the onion. Like, that's kind of like how the truth is too. Like,
totally.
um, you know, it just is how it is. And I think like there's this piece that keeps coming in, and I'll let you kind of maybe see what's coming through for you. But when people want to know what their star family is, other than like going in through meditation, like, what are your like, so there's this piece of, it might not be time for you to know, or maybe it's supposed to come to you in a different modality or through a different person or through a different form. But what are they bringing to you beyond meditation, as far as somebody who is like searching and seeking and wants to know kind of like what their that kind of that piece of their spiritual energetic lineage is, like, what star family are they expressing in the most strongest form? Because again, you can be connected to more than one. Like, I think that that's important too, but there is a, like, you probably had one with the strongest connection.
Or the more purposeful one that you're coming in here to do, that you may want to be more connected to, right? Like I, even for myself, I know I'm connected to the Octurians as well, but Palladian is more where I lean more towards in this lifetime, because of what, you know, I've chosen to come back and onto Earth and help with or do whatever your purpose is here to do, right? So absolutely truth in that too, right? It even kind of comes back to what I said before about that lady coming up to me and saying, you look Palladian. I was just like, what? You know, but it set the seed to say, oh, that's really strange to me, but maybe I should look at that, right? It could be something simple like those types of things too. Now, it's funny because they are bringing up a little bit about like characteristics. So you may hear a lot about, and I even, you know, we spoke a bit into the energy about some of the main ones, but the thing about it is there are some people out there that will speak into very specific characteristics that they have gathered or learned for themselves or whatever, however they came across that to be their truth about what they feel for some of these galactic beings. But what my guides are also saying though is to remember very again, it's about perception, right? So just because someone else is feeling that's what they've picked up on does not always mean that's the end all be all and that's all there is to those, that race or those beings. There's always a lot more to it. It's just like Earth has all sorts of different races of humans, right? It can be very similar, obviously, in other galactic beings. So just because there's this parameter put out and saying, oh, well, this is, what they are. It doesn't mean you can't have a mixture from a bunch of different ones, right? You just, again, going with what resonates and what feels true for you, that is going to be your truth. Every soul, we've all lived different adventures. We've all been different places. So yes, our truths are going to be different. And there's a high likelihood you're connecting with more than one, obviously, type of being. And that's okay. But coming back again to what you've said, like there might just be more one that you're considering as Starseed family, or what some people would put out there as Starseed family for this lifetime, because that's going to be more of the energy you want to connect with for whatever you're here to do or whatever you're experiencing or want to create here. So that's a good segue to Starseed.
I have another question related to this to see what they bring through you. Are you game?
Yeah, do it. I'm ready.
So there's some information out there that you can, because again, we're talking about this lifetime, right? This human lifetime. And so there are people out there suggesting, and information out there suggesting that you can figure out your starseed origins based on your astrology birth chart. Is that?
So again, right away when they show me astrology, there's so much to astrology, right? Like again, it's like layered upon layered upon layered upon layered. Through it, yes. Again, that's like, if anybody knows much about the Akashic records, it's kind of like what I call the library of the universe, and your soul and everything that's, ever gone on is kind of always recorded somewhere. And it's also recorded through the stars. So if you went back and you got detailed enough, yeah, you could probably absolutely find it out through astrology. But they're also saying it'd take a very particular person that is quite connected to be able to do something like that, because many are not willing to listen to just the information that's being given, because sometimes it feels a little too far-fetched, right? So being human, a lot of people want to make sure it's relevant for that person in that moment, and sometimes they will not exactly read it to the extent where it would have to be read to be able to tell somebody that type of lineage. But absolutely, it does exist within the stars. So even in this lifetime, the only thing they're saying is that you probably wouldn't be able to go back all the way, right? Because again, you're coming in for a specific purpose, so it may only show parts, to a certain extent, but likely would show you the starseed beings, for not just yourself, but who you also will likely be connecting with in this lifetime.
Thanks.
Yeah. That was a good question. I like that one. Anyway, I feel like we're wrapping up on this one here. So leave your thoughts about what you guys think about starseeds. Drop us some comments. Drop us what you think, or who you're feeling more in tune with. Go look up some of the ones that we said in this one here, and maybe someday we'll go into more episodes where we're a little more intentional about going down some rabbit holes, with some of this stuff, because it does get to be a pretty fun conversation, and it can be a lot of fun to hear what other people have to say or what they've gotten from it. So same with this one. If you feel like you want to drop us a comment or leave us a little blurb about what you're feeling, in your lifetime, we'd love to hear about it. We love to hear about people's journeys and stories. So thank you for joining us.
Yeah, one last little note. So we will be forming a community, and it will be very affordable and attainable for anybody to join, very minimal. And so we will, like, potentially, if there's enough interest, we could hop on and offer maybe like a little star family reading situation where we can tune in and help you to kind of hone in on that if you like. So we have lots of exciting things and potential possibilities coming in, and so definitely stay tuned and let us, you get to help direct the conversation and the topics and what we're offering. So
Absolutely. It'll be fun. You guys, no joke, like keep an eyeball for it because, and if you're listening to this at a much later date, I'm sure you'll be able to find, we'll be putting it everywhere for anybody else to join at a later time. So we wish you all the best for today. And thank you for joining us once again. And we'll see you all soon.